I've always loved the idea of video game hidden gems, so now that there's this amazing game out there that barely anybody's played yet, is just exciting to me, which is why I think it's about time this game gets at least some recognition. So hey everybody, my name is Chance, and allow me to introduce you to what I truly believe to be the best fighting game that nobody's ever played yet. It's War of the Monsters. It's in the thumbnail. It's kinda obvious. It's good. War of the Monsters hit store shelves in 2003, and would you look at that box art. It's got everything you need. It's got monkey and robot and people running away from monkey and robot. But honestly, this is such a great box art. It's really cool how it shows a East versus West Royal Rumble right off the bat, with Kongar here representing the West with his obvious King Kong inspired design, and Ultra V here representing the East with a Japan style giant mech. It's really fantastic actually. Incognito Entertainment was the team responsible for developing the game, and up until War of the Monsters, the only other games they had developed were a few Twisted Metal games. Twisted Metal Black in particular is an insanely fun game, and a personal favorite of mine. But since 2009, they've been completely defunct, which is a shame, because their development resume, while small, is pretty decent in my opinion. One interesting thing about Incognito is that David Jaffe, the creator of the God of War series and director of the 2012 Twisted Metal reboot, was one of the founders of the company. He didn't have anything to do with War of the Monsters though, but still that's just pretty cool to know. But do you notice something strange here? Yeah, the game was actually published by Sony. That's pretty odd that Sony themselves would publish such an obscure fighting game, but I think given that Incognito had a pretty good track record up until this point, Sony was willing to put their eggs into the War of the Monsters basket. And actually, I might be able to prove this too. See, back at the end of 2015, Sony announced they were bringing PS2 classics to the PS4 via digital download re-releases. And you had your obvious choices like a few GTA titles, Twisted Metal Black, some great RPGs. But see here? Yeah, they included War of the Monsters. It seems like back in 2003, Sony might have hoped that War of the Monsters would turn out to be a big flagship fighting series for them. And hell, even with the 2015 re-release, they might have hoped it would have sparked some interest. Why else would they re-release it among the first batch of PS2 classics to be available alongside these other fantastic games? But as we know now, the game would fall into obscurity, and that's where we are today. I should mention that the footage you're going to be seeing here now is from the PS4 version of the game. I never actually owned the PS2 version. It was always that game I rented from Blockbuster over and over again, but I didn't actually buy for myself. But enough talk, enough history lesson for now. Let's just get to the game already. God, that looks so sick. The game starts up with a great intro, reminiscent of a typical 1950s sci-fi B-movie, complete with spinning newspaper and all. Yeah, so pretty much, UFOs invade Earth, humans create a secret weapon that annihilates them, which, I gotta say, good job humanity, I didn't think you'd actually win there. But, lo and behold, UFO radiation spawns giant monsters all over the world, thus creating the War of the Monsters. Now that's what I call a main menu. The drive-in movie theater is such a nice touch. I'll get to those other game modes later, but for now, let's hit adventure mode and get to the monster roll call. First up, we got Raptros, a yellow dragon looking creature that's kind of a mix between King Ghidorah and Rodan. He looks great though. Togera, a pretty basic looking Godzilla ripoff if I'm being honest. Not much to say here. Praetor, an awesome looking giant praying mantis that reminds me of those giant killer ants from the movie Dem. His design is just great. Here we got the aforementioned Kongar. Not much to say here, he's obviously the King Kong stand-in for the game. Robo 47, a man-made military robot built by the US and is sent to the front lines to fight the other monsters. I'm not entirely sure where his inspiration came from though, so if you have any ideas, please let me know. Agamo, some kind of totemic stone god or something, I'm not really sure. Reminds me of those stone heads from Easter Island or something. Pretty okay design overall. Next up is Ultra V, who has always stood out to me. He's arguably the coolest looking of the whole bunch. Whenever I would play this game as a kid, he was always the character my friends would fight over, and I can't blame them. I mean, just look at him. He's an awesome looking Japanese mech, resembling something along the lines of Mazinger Z, but his name seems to come from the long-running Ultraman series, which, aside from the few Ultraman manga that I do own, I'm not too familiar with. Magmo. Oh, Magmo. Some kind of lava titan? I don't know. He reminds me of the lava titan from Hercules and the Kingdom Hearts games, just less gooey. He was always my least favorite character. His design just never really appealed to me. Ah yes, and now for Kinetic Clops. Kinetic Clops? Kinetoclops. Whatever. Kinetoclops. This design just sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? A sentient being made of pure electricity with a giant eyeball in the middle. I love it. Easily my favorite character though. 10 out of 10. Although now that I'm really looking at him, I think he might be a reference to Incognito Entertainment themselves. Even the whole eye motif and all. Huh. And finally we have Zorgulon. Probably your most generic looking stock alien creature yet. Reminds me of something out of Mars Attacks. Fun fact, that movie terrified me as a kid. Looks pretty neat though. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and pick Best Boy Kinetoclops and start the adventure mode. Each level of the adventure mode shows a pretty sweet intro on who you'll be fighting against. For the first level, it's Kongar. Now this is it. This is the game I fell in love with as a kid. Now you know when I said that this is a fighting game? Well yeah, it is, but as you're seeing here, it's more than that. It's a fighting game, third-person shooter, arena brawler? Yeah, let's go with that. In the early 2000s, if you were playing a fighting game, chances are it was probably Super Smash Bros. Melee or Soul Calibur 2. I know I played the hell out of those games, which is why seeing this kind of gameplay come from the same era just blew my mind back in the day. It's not your traditional fighting game, that's for sure. Enemy monsters are shown with a number and health meter in a circle, with the number just indicating how many monsters you're up against. The color of the health is what's important here though. The more damage you deal against the enemy monster, the more red the enemy health meter becomes. The more red the enemy health meter gets, the closer they are to being knocked out. Simple stuff. Now what you can't see though is the enemy's energy meter and special meter. See, every monster has a projectile attack that they can spam, but each use of it lowers your energy pretty quickly, so it's best to save it for when someone is running from you or they're just far away. And you really don't want to run out of energy. Running out of energy makes it so that not only can you not use your projectile attack, you can't attack at all. The only way to get it back is to either wait a bit or look for some energy pickups, which is another unique thing. See, there's health and energy pickups scattered throughout the map. Green replenishes health, blue replenishes energy. Again, pretty simple stuff. Now where it gets fun is picking up these red orbs. Grabbing one of these bad boys fills up your special meter. Well, I call it a meter, but it's really just a tiny box. And if that tiny box is blinking red, then you got access to your special attack. Every monster has two special attacks, one for long range and one for short range. Using either special will empty the box. But there's three ways to get it back. Either find another red orb, knock out an enemy monster, or keep collecting enough energy pickups so that your energy meter fills up twice over. And I should mention one more thing. See this white glowing box thingy? That's a cloaking device. It makes your monster apparently invisible, but it doesn't really work well. It always seems like the enemy AI knows where you are, so I always just ignore it. So the game is pretty chaotic. Every stage looks completely different from the time the fight starts to the time it ends. Buildings are completely destructible, which is great. It wouldn't be a monster brawler without completely destructible environments after all, and it really just adds to the mayhem. Everything can be picked up and used as a weapon too, and I truly mean everything. Cars, trucks, debris, tanks, steel beams, you name it and you can use it. And the game expects you to use this to your advantage. If you think you can just punch and kick your way to victory, well, you're in for a rough time. There are two weapons that stick out from the rest though, those being the radio antennas and these barely visible sharp metal poles that usually appear from buildings being destroyed as the fight goes on, but it's the radio antennas that are scattered throughout the map and the ones you'll be using more often. Now why are these so special? Well, it's cause you can f***ing impale monsters on them. That's right, watch them struggle to try to yank it out while you wail on them for free. Look at them go! And the best part is if you can launch them while they're stunned, you can do it again. I swear, watching them get punched to the skies never gets old. Lots of fighting games have that mechanic where the enemy is left completely defenseless, like the air juggling in Tekken or shield breaking in Smash Bros. So since War of the Monsters doesn't have a traditional combo mechanic, think of the impaling feature as something similar. Now real quick before I step into the multiplayer, let me go over battle tokens. See, after every stage in the adventure mode, you'll be given a certain amount of tokens based on how well you did in the fight, and you can use these tokens to unlock extra costumes, more stages, and a few multiplayer minigames. We'll get to those later. And it really doesn't take long at all to unlock everything. Now this is where the real fun is. Get a buddy to play with and go up against each other and 2 other enemy monsters in a 4-man free-for-all with good old 2-player split screen action. Well, kind of. When you and your friend are near each other, the screen will combine to show all the player characters and then go into split screen when you're far enough away. It's a little jarring at first, but you get used to it pretty quick. The single player is chaotic, but the multiplayer is just insane. It seems like every 5 seconds, something's exploding, someone's getting launched into the air, somebody's trying to yank a radio antenna from their chest, buildings are collapsing, special attacks are going off left and right. It's so awesome. Oh, and if you're wondering why Kinetoclops here looks like the Fishman from Creature from the Black Lagoon and Ultra V looks like the Ava unit from Neon Genesis, it's because these are their final costumes. Costumes 2 and 3 are your basic recolors, but costume number 4 completely changes how your monster looks like. I won't spoil the surprise here and show you every monster's final costume because you should really see them for yourself. Seriously, they're all really great and worth racking up the battle tokens to unlock. Anyways, back to the multiplayer. It's pure fun. I can't get enough of it. The sheer amount of absurdity that goes on during one match is enough to make a grown man smile. It just doesn't stop as monsters get knocked down left and right. Special attacks are being constantly recharged, not to mention any red orbs you may find lying around, which just makes for more mayhem. Watching as the entire city you were just fighting in slowly becomes this unrecognizable wasteland is fantastic. And after a while, power-ups will start to respawn by themselves, even after you've completely leveled the city, so the chaos can continue further. The footage you're watching now is from the unlimited free-for-all mode, so it ends when we say it does. Although you can customize this in the menu to be first to 2 knockouts wins the match, first to 3, you get it. Oh, and of course the enemy AI is customizable too, but I like to keep it at medium, not too easy and not too hard, just perfect, which makes fighting them all the more fun. So the game is loads of fun, the single player is great, the multiplayer is amazing, the game is perfect. Is what I would like to say. For as much as I adore this game, it does have some flaws that I just can't overlook. And well, no game is perfect, and the same holds true for War of the Monsters. During the adventure mode, you'll come across some boss fights, and while this sounds fun in theory, they're all less than ideal to say the least. The first of which starts you off against a wave of really weak Krator recolors. They all go down pretty fast. Okay, nothing wrong there. But it all goes downhill once the actual boss shows up. The guy stands on top of this platform here and will constantly barrage you with bombs. The idea here is to dodge a few of them while catching at least one of them and throw it back at him. And this is a lot harder than it sounds, as you have to be perfect with the timing to catch the bomb. If you're half a second off, you're gonna get sent flying. And to make matters worse, once you do manage to catch one, is this. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. Oh, and no, you can't damage him with your special attack either. The only way to hit him is to use the bombs. As you can tell, this becomes tedious really fast. Fortunately, this is only his first phase. When he gets to about 80% health, he'll come down and fight you on the ground. Thankfully, here you can damage him with all your regular attacks and your special attack. It's still a really long battle, sure, but it's way less annoying than his first phase, and after a few minutes of punching, shooting, and dodging his attacks when you can, he'll finally go down. And if you thought that first boss was rough, well, it doesn't stop there, because the second boss is even more tedious. And even though I love this design, reminds me of Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors and Biollante from the Godzilla series, this fight is somehow even worse than the last. Just like the last boss fight, this one revolves around picking something up and throwing it at the boss. See, there's debris scattered all around, and every now and then the boss will lunge at you, briefly opening its mouth, revealing its weak point. You gotta be quick and have some debris ready to throw at it. But just like before, this is easier said than done. The boss will shoot poison at you, and this can only be blocked by using the debris as a shield. Thing is, it only lasts 2 or 3 hits before breaking, so if it lunges at you and your piece of debris just broke, you're gonna get eaten. Oh, and of course it'll retreat underground and attack you with its roots, just to make things more annoying. To avoid them, you have to constantly be jumping, but you're guaranteed to take at least some damage here. Although, this section is way easier when you're using Raptros or Praetor since they can fly at the expense of some energy. And even though it takes a good chunk of damage each time it gets hit, between the poison you have to block, the roots you have to jump over, picking up debris and making sure you have one ready for the lunge attack, I'd rather fight the first boss than have to put up with this guy. You can damage it with your special attack. Some monsters have an easier time with this than others, but from my experience, it doesn't stun the boss. So yeah, it'll take damage, sure, but chances are so will you. But with enough trial and error and many pieces of debris later, you'll whittle it down to a single head and get the better of it. Now real quick, I'm gonna go over the minigames because there just isn't really much to talk about here, and well, they're all pretty bad. So we got 3 minigames to choose from: Dodgeball, Big Shot, and Crush-O-Rama. Let's start with Dodgeball first. And, welp, yeah, that's Dodgeball. First person to hit the other monster 3 times wins. That's it. Next. Big Shot. Okay, so at least with Dodgeball, I know how to play that. But this? Something's wrong here. Okay, so from what I understand, the objective is to launch yourself up on the ramp and land on one of the buildings to rack up the points. Thing is, if you're not a monster that can fly, well, I guess you're just out of luck. I'm pretty sure I'm doing something wrong here, like maybe I'm not hitting the right button or something, but I swear we tried a bunch of times and we just couldn't do it. Oh well. Next. For the final minigame, we got Crush-O-Rama, which is easily the best of the 3. The main goal here is to just destroy as many buildings as you can before the timer runs out. It's simple, yeah, but it's funner than the other 2 minigames, that's for sure. You would think for unlockable minigames these would be a lot more fun or given more depth or something, but no, they feel like an afterthought from the developers, like they needed to have some other multiplayer modes aside from just fighting each other. But don't let those negative aspects deter you in any way, the game is still fantastic. And if there was any game I wish would have gotten a sequel, it's War of the Monsters. Moving towards the end of the adventure mode now, the final levels of the game has you get abducted by aliens and fighting against a horde of Zorbulons on a UFO ship overlooking Earth, which is just awesome. Having a stage set in space is such a great and fun idea. It's pretty small too, so having 4 monsters fight in such a compact space is just a recipe for destruction. The UFO ship is easily one of my favorite stages in the game. The fight itself shouldn't give you any trouble either. The Zorbulons go down pretty quick, making for a fun and easy fight. But after the Zorbulons are defeated and the UFO ship makes a crash landing towards Earth, you have to prepare yourself to face the final boss, Cerebulon, Destroyer of Worlds. And the fight itself is actually pretty epic. Under a red sky, you finally go toe to toe with the one responsible for this whole mess to begin with. Cerebulon has 3 forms, that's right, 3, so it's kinda like fighting 3 different bosses back to back. For his first form, he'll use this mech suit that has a force field which protects him from all damage. You can only hit him once he has to recharge from blasting you with his laser attack. But this attack will straight up one-shot you if you don't hide behind these monument things. It won't tank the entire laser beam, but it'll hold long enough to save you. Once the force field is down, you're free to attack him. Do this enough times and he'll switch to his second form. And for this form, we're back to the same old. You gotta use these broken pieces from his mech suit to throw at him, causing him to take damage. He's a lot faster in this form, and he has this annoying red lightning attack, but overall it's not too difficult. While it is satisfying seeing the sparks fly whenever you damage him, there just isn't much to this phase of the battle at all, easily my least favorite part of the fight. Finally, for his third and final form, he'll ditch all the extra tech and decide the only way to settle this is to have a good old fashioned monster brawl. This is the most difficult part of the fight, but it's also my favorite. He moves and attacks pretty fast. If you get close enough to him and you're not ready to block, then you're gonna be on the receiving end of a pretty nasty multi-hit combo that deals big damage. But on the other hand, if you get far enough away, he'll roll into a ball and charge at you, sending you flying, and he'll close the gap between you two really fast afterwards. The fight is as much a test of endurance as it is a test of skill. He doesn't leave many openings for attacks. Really the only one is when he finishes his combo attack. If you manage to block at least the last few hits, you can manage to sneak in some of your own before he goes on the offensive again. That being said, the most consistent way to deal damage to him is to just lock onto him and whittle away at his health while kiting back with your projectile attack and making sure to grab any energy pickups lying around. You'll still have to be careful since he has his own projectile attack and he'll even throw stuff at you, just like any other monster, so try not to lose vision of him. but with a combination of projectile kiting, the occasional special attack, and just landing a few hits in when you can, he'll finally go down. With the final boss out of the way, you'll be treated to a short little ending movie that shows the origin of the monster you play it as. I won't spoil the other monsters' origin stories because most of them are pretty great, but I will show this one. So yeah, apparently Kinetoclops was just some unlucky security guard who was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Huh, go figure. Afterwards, you'll see the credits, but what's really great about this is that it shows an inside look at the Incognito team developing the game, and just them goofing off. I love seeing behind the scenes stuff like this. It's really cool to see just how this whole thing came together and that the face is responsible for it all. Seeing all the concept art shown here is just so awesome too. Like seriously, take a look at some of this stuff. You can see just how many designs and ideas they went through for each monster. At its core, War of the Monsters is a love letter to classic monster movies disguised as a fighting game. And video games are an art form, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The amount of hard work the Incognito team put into making the game is clear. You can just tell they poured their heart and soul into creating a fun monster brawler. It's just such a shame that we never got another War of the Monsters game. And what makes this hurt even more is that the ending to the Cerebulon fight even shows this little parasite thing leaving his body and running away, showing us that he actually survived the final fight, hinting at a possible sequel. But of course, we know today that that sequel would never happen. War of the Monsters is a game that means a lot to me. I have so many fond memories playing the hell out of this game with friends as a kid back in 2003, and I'm still playing the hell out of it now 17 years later as an adult. This game was, and still is, the closest game ever to perfect the monster fighting formula. And as a huge fan of giant monster movies, both new and old, especially the Godzilla series, that's something I can appreciate a lot. But really, I'm just a huge fan of anything giant monster related, and just knowing that this game even exists is enough to please the giant monster loving fanboy that I am. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's War of the Monsters. I hope I did a good job at explaining just exactly why I think this game deserves more recognition than it got. And yeah, sure, it has its flaws, and maybe it wasn't this big mega hit flagship fighting game series that Sony wanted it to be, but I promise you, you will not have more fun playing a fighting game, third-person shooter, arena brawler with shitty minigames. But yeah, if you found this game interesting in any way, I really recommend checking it out on the PSN store. It's only like 10 bucks. And again, it's super fun, guys. I promise you won't have more fun playing this game, especially with friends. And yeah, I do have more video game related content coming your way soon. The next game I want featured on the channel is a pretty crazy one, to say the least. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. Thanks for hearing me out, and I'll see you next time. Chance out.